There's a whole lot of noise being made and nothing substantial is happening in the process. It's all running in place or running forward really fast just to have to run backwards and run it all over again. I'll explain that to you in a minute. So in an unprecedented move, more than 250 Venezuelans have been deported by the United States and sent to El Salvador, the dreaded El Salvador, where they were transferred to a maximum security prison. Salvadorian President and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed this on Sunday. We saw it on Monday. We saw it all over the media. They actually did it like they were filming a movie. Get it from this angle, get it from that angle, get it low. This is the weirdest stuff I've ever seen. I mean, if you're transporting prisoners, you're transporting prisoners, but the way how this is done is almost Hollywood type production. Aerial views of vehicles moving, military type units moving in tactical formations. You know, it's just out there. Now, growing danger in Venezuela linked to gang crime led to an exodus of millions of Venezuelans, the overwhelming majority of whom were seeking better living conditions after their nation's economy came undone last decade. Things fell apart in Venezuela. Gangs started taking over, similar to what's happening in Haiti. The system collapsed, and then it's like every man for himself. So people started forming gangs and getting to the money and feeding their family and taking control. And you know, wherever there is no law and order, the strong will always prey upon the weak, or predators will always find praise. So a lot of people were fleeing Venezuela because they just not built like that. They had dreams of making it to the United States of America and living the American dream eventually, if they were let in and allowed to stay. Donald Trump seized on the gang during his campaign to paint pictures of communities that he contended were taken over by what were actually a handful of lawmakers. So during his presidency or his presidential run campaign, Donald Trump leaned heavily towards they're here, they're taking over entire communities, they have communities in fear, they have Americans living in fear, etc. When wasn't really the case, but it got a lot of people to support him, like get them the hell out of America. Well, U.S. District Judge James E. Boasberg issued an order on Sunday evening blocking the deportations. That means they were not supposed to send these people to El Salvador. But lawyers told him that they were already two planes full of migrants in the air, one already headed for El Salvador and the other already headed for Honduras. Boasberg, the judge, verbally ordered the planes to be turned around. Turn those planes around now. But they apparently were not. And he did not include that directive in a written order. So he should have wrote the order. Instead, the judge shouted out his mouth, turn those planes around now. And since it was not a written order and it was just a verbal order, it was disobeyed. Bukele announced via the social media network X, that used to be Twitter, that 238 alleged members of the Venezuelan gang had arrived in his country and they were transferred to the Terrorism Confinement Center, TCC or Cecot, a mega prison with a capacity to hold 40,000 inmates. There, they will remain for a period of 1 year. That 1 year could actually be renewed. So they could actually end up being there year after year after year after year. Now, a video that was shared on Bukele's social media shows the detainees with shackled hands and feet being escorted by armed officers from the plane. Some are placed in armored vehicles while others are hunched over as officers push their heads down, are forced onto buses. I didn't see anybody being non-compliant. I could imagine what type of a shock this was to their system. A lot of people arrived with a lot of hair on their heads, long hair, only to be seen shortly after with no hair at all. Pretty much looking like all the other prisoners look in this particular Cecot place. So the Alien Enemies Act, invoked during World War II, or One and Two, and the War of 1812, requires a president to declare the United States is at war, giving him extraordinary powers to detain or remove foreigners who otherwise would have projections under immigration or criminal laws. It was last used to justify the detention of Japanese American civilians during World War II, something they did to the Japanese, rounded them up and put them in camps. Now, this controversial law, the Alien Enemies Act, a lot of Trump supporters are like, he's not making up anything new. It's on the books. He is just enforcing the laws that are on the books. The last time that law was used was a long, long time ago. The War of 1812 requires the president to declare that the country is at war, which gives him extraordinary powers, right? And the last time it was used was to justify the detention of Japanese American civilians during World War II. Now, the ACLU, which filed the lawsuit that led to Boasberg's temporary restraining order on deportations, this is an activist group. I guess they said that it was asking the government whether the removals to El Salvador were in defiance of the court. Quote unquote, they said, "This morning we asked the government to assure the court that its order was not violated, and we're waiting to hear, as well as trying to do our own investigations," ACLU's lead lawyer, Lee Gellerant, said in a statement on Sunday. Now, Venezuela's government, in a statement on Sunday, rejected the use of Trump's declaration of the law, characterizing it as evocative of the darkest episode in human history, from slavery to the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. Wow. The Trump administration has not identified the migrants that are deported or provided any evidence that they are members of Tren de Aragua, or that they committed any crimes in the U.S. This is super important, okay? The Trump administration has not identified the migrants that are deported or provided any evidence that they are members of the Tren de Aragua, which is a gang, or that they committed any crimes in the U.S. It also sent 2 top members of the Salvadoran MS-13 gang to El Salvador, who had been arrested in the United States of America. Now, what I'm seeing here is people are being mixed in. Like, yeah, 1 or 2 in there are probably gang members who ran away from their country along with the crowd, made it into the U.S. Majority of these guys are just regular people, right? Classified as gang members and sent to El Salvador. Immigration lawyers said that late on Friday they noticed Venezuelans who otherwise couldn't be deported under immigration laws were being moved to Texas for deportation flights. So they began to file lawsuits to halt those transfers. Let me read that again. Immigration lawyers said that late on Friday, they noticed a group of Venezuelans who otherwise could not be deported under immigration laws being moved to Texas for deportation flights. So they couldn't have been deported any other way under the immigration laws. So he used that old law, and that old law allowed him superpowers to do extraordinary things, which is the Alien Act invoked during World War I and II and the War of 1812. Wow. Well, Basically, any Venezuelan citizen in the U.S. may be removed. So this is where it starts to get dangerous. But you know what? Again, let me pause and say this before I go any further. I surely remember the Venezuelan community supporting Donald Trump heavily during his campaign for presidency. So now that they are getting what they voted for, I'm kind of standing out the way and just bringing the news to you with no fluff to it. I love to see people get what they voted for. Maybe next time they will think more. See, a lot of these people think that they're Caucasian and think that they will not be touched because they're a part of a protected group. Oh, we are just like them, papi, so they'll look out for us. But when the shit hits the fan, they find out you're very much low on the totem pole, right? Immigration lawyers said late Friday they noticed people who otherwise could not be deported under immigration laws being moved to Texas for deportation flights. This is when they sprang into action and began to file lawsuits to halt the transfers. Basically, any Venezuelan citizen in the U.S. may be removed on the pretext of belonging to Tren de Aragua. That's all they gotta say, is you belong to one of these gangs, Tren de Aragua, or you belong to MS-13, so we sending you to El Salvador or that other place, right? Man. So, with no chance of a defense either, because you won't get a hearing or anything. The litigation that led to the hold on deportation was filed on behalf of 5 Venezuelans that were held in Texas, whose lawyers said that they were concerned that they'll be falsely accused of being members of the gang. Once the act is invoked, they warned that Trump could simply declare anyone a Tren de Aragua member and remove them from the country just like that, which it seems like that is what took place. Boasberg, the judge who barred those Venezuelan deportations Saturday morning when the suit was filed, but only broadened it to all people in federal custody who could be targeted by the act after his afternoon hearing. He noted that the law has never before been used outside of a congressionally declared war, and that plaintiffs may successfully argue Donald Trump's exceeded his legal authority in invoking this law. Remember, they told us at the beginning, right, that a lot of stuff's going to happen during this administration's reign, and a lot of it's going to be wrong or against the books, and there are going to be fights because these advocacy groups and attorneys are going to be fighting it, and judges. However, in the process, some people are going to get hurt. Now, when you already landed in El Salvador, they already shaved your head, and you're already sitting in the Cecot prison, the shock is already in your system, right? You have a long way to fight your way back. The bar on deportation stands for up to 14 days that the judge has put out. So nobody should be deported in the next 14 days, and the migrants will remain in federal custody during that time. Boasberg, the same judge, has scheduled a hearing for this Friday coming up to hear additional arguments in the case. He said that he had to act because the migrants whose deportations may actually violate the Constitution deserve the chance to have their pleas heard in court. Now, once they're out of the country, Boasberg said, there is very little that I can do. So, like I said, for those who got saved at the last minute, they're pretty lucky. The ones who are already gone, there's really almost nothing that could be done for them. So it's going to be a long fight for them to get back this way if that's what they choose to do. Now, following Boasberg's judicial order, Bukele responded mockingly on social media and said, oopsie, too late. Could you imagine? Professional U.S. Secretary, oopsie, too late. Damn. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the arrival of the suspected gang members in El Salvador, and he thanked Bukele, calling him the strongest security leader in our region. This operation is part of Donald Trump's long-running crusade against illegal immigration into the U.S. In January, Donald Trump signed an executive order declaring Tren de Aragua and MS-13 as foreign terrorist organizations, those two gangs. I wish he would do the same for the KKK. Anyways, during his election campaign, Trump promised to carry out the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. However, a recent report suggests that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE agents, have deported fewer immigrants in February of 2025 than in the same month of the previous year during Joe Biden's administration. 11,000 in February of 2025 compared to Joe Biden doing 12,000 in February of 2024. Not only that, more Americans have lost their jobs and been fired or laid off than illegal immigrants have been deported, if you compare the numbers. The agreement between the U.S. and El Salvador is a sign of strengthening diplomatic ties. The U.S. had reportedly agreed to pay El Salvador something around 5.5 million euros to imprison 300 alleged members of Tren de Aragua for a year, according to news outlets. So that's around $6 million to imprison 300 people for 1 year. The U.S. will pay a very low rate for them, but a high rate for us, said Bukele, because of the transfer of the money, right? The amount the money is worth, suggesting that the deal would also help to fund the massive Cecot prison complex, which needs people because it was built to house 40,000 and they need bodies to fill it. Rubio described the pact as a safe third country. Safe third country. There are people on my video saying the proper term is safe third world country. No, it says safe third country deal to deport citizens who have violated U.S. immigration laws. Now, what that simply means is this is meant to scare a lot of people into self-deporting or go into hiding, whichever one they choose to do. I'm not their advocate. I'm just bringing the news, right? So this is meant to scare a lot of people. This is meant to scare those who are on the outside of the U.S., trying to get into the U.S., to start thinking, you know what? I think it's better I stay where I'm at, because if I make it over there, I might be classified as a MS-13 or a Tren de Aragua member and be handcuffed and shipped out to El Salvador to the Cecot joint where I don't want to go because they got me bending over all day, shaving my head and chained to 100 other dudes. This is also meant for people who are here, who are illegal, to start packing their bags and using the app to try to get up out of here, right? Before they end up in this situation. This could mean that the U.S. government could deport migrants from other countries who do not have Salvadoran nationality to El Salvador. So you end up in El Salvador, you are screwed. He has also offered to do the same with dangerous criminals who are currently in custody and are serving their sentences in the United States, even if they are U.S. citizens or legal residents, Marco Rubio said. So, I want y'all to think about that before you go out here getting into trouble. Now is the time more than ever before to be a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. Could you imagine being born and raised in the United States of America, but you're just on a bit of a wild side and you get into some trouble? So you're expecting to, go to jail or prison, do your time, pay your debt to society, become rehabilitated and return to these streets of the city and the town that you love, in the country that you were born and raised, only to be shipped to El Salvador, Cecot prison or Cecot prison. and you're doing 15, 20 years in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, their customs are not your customs, and you pretty much have no way of fighting your way out of that situation. You know, I don't think this is going to fly, but it's happening right before our eyes. Now, the government of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro rejected the use of the anachronistic U.S. law to deport suspected gang members. He says it violates the migrants' rights. What will happen to them after this point? Well, like the judge said, at this point, those who have already been sent out, there's nothing we can do for very little we can do for them. This action that was carried out by the Trump administration involved allegedly linked individuals who are allegedly linked to criminal organization. Now, the word alleged plays a huge role in this because they've been accused, but nobody has had the chance to prove before a court that they are or they are not. The administration has not proven if these people are or they are not. They just want to get a large number of people out of the country. So this old law is invoked, the Aliens Enemies Act of 1798. And under that, they now have the power to just grab anybody and say, come here, you're a part of the, MS-13, or you're a part of the notorious, whatever the hell the name of the gang is, and you're out of here. This crazy. You know what, though? Like I said before, I don't have a dog in this fight. The videos that were released by El Salvador government on Sunday showed the men disembarking, getting off of an airplane onto the airport tarmac, where officers in riot gear stood in formation. This is a scary sight, okay? Watching it on TV was like watching an action movie. But could you imagine being the individuals that are getting off this plane? The men appear to have shackles on their hands and their feet, and they did them the same way they did the others. They're bent over at the waist, which the Russians actually use the same tactic. You are not allowed to stand up straight and walk, turn your head, and look around. The tactic behind that is you are not allowed to see where you're at. So you should be disoriented at all times. That way you can't plan an escape out of there, or you can't plan an escape having somebody come in there to get you. It's a tactic they use. Also, it's a tactic that shows superiority. It shows how small and how meaningless you are in this whole system. You will be subservient the entire time, bent at the waist, looking at the floor, and do as you're told, as you are told. Pretty crazy. Now, over here, this place is situated in a place called Tecoluca. And this is about an hour from El Salvador, actual El Salvador. This massive prison complex opened in January of 2023 after being constructed in just 7 months flat. Record time. Its design and its operation embodies a harsh approach to incarceration, housing inmates in large, windowless cells that are equipped with only the basic amenities: tiered metal bunk beds, an open toilet, and a cement basin. Each cell fits 65 to 70 prisoners, and there is one toilet and one sink for 65 to 70 guys. I want you to wrap your heads around this, right? Personal items like books or even letters from family members are banned completely. You can't read a book. You can't get a letter from a loved one. You can't make a phone call. Nothing. Prisoners spend 23.5 hours of every day locked in their cells, and they get 30 minutes window of exercise or religious activities in a central hallway. Their meals are super basic, consisting mainly of beans, rice, and fried plantains. No meat is served to them. So you are instantly vegetarian. Yo, this is super cruel. Beans and rice, and that's it. And no meat is served to them. Beans, rice, and fried plantains, and you about to eat this day in, day out, breakfast, lunch, dinner. The government does not provide regular updates on prison population here. However, the human rights organization that goes by the name of Cristosal, they reported that as of March of 2024, El Salvador had 110,000 people incarcerated, including convicted individuals and those who are not convicted yet. They're just awaiting to go to trial. This figure is more than double the 36,000 inmates reported by the government in April of 2021. So they went ahead and built this mega facility. Now, building this mega facility needs people to fill this mega facility. Lo and behold, here comes a deal with the U.S. government where the U.S. government will pay them some money and they will help them to fill that facility with bodies. Last year, the same organization that did the research, Cristosal, they reported that at least 261 people had died in El Salvador prisons during their gang crackdown. The organization, along with others, has documented cases of abuse, torture, inadequate medical care, etc., etc. Let's put it like this. It is hell on wheels. Or should we say it is hell without wheels? Hey man, I'll close this video by saying the same thing I said in the beginning. If you want to know what's going to happen to the people who landed there already, the 200 and something, almost 300 people who landed there already, majority of them were suspected of and accused of, but were not proven to be. Let that sink in. Then on top of that, there's nothing that can be done for them after they've landed. The judge did stop more deportation flights from leaving, but that expires in 14 days. Now, in 14 days, I guess he will decide if he should extend it or let the deportation flights fly. I have no dog in this fight. It's kind of sad watching it all happen, but I also saw the Venezuelan community. By the way, Venezuelan community just had their TPS status revoked. That is the temporary protective status, which covered over 1 million Venezuelans in the United States of America. And I told you in previous videos that once their TPS is revoked, they will become fair game for the ICE officers on these raids. Once that temporary protective status is revoked, you are out of status. You have no right to be in the U.S. You will be picked up by ICE agents and you will be deported. Now, a simple way to pass the court system so you won't have a day in court is just to, under this old law that Donald Trump has reenacted, which is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, your court process goes out the window. He says you're guilty, you go bye-bye. Hey, think before you vote next time, all right? It affects more than just you in your household. We're watching people get what they voted for. I have no dog in this fight. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one and I'll catch you on the next video. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Hit that subscribe button. Click the bell next to the subscribe button, but don't just click the bell. Hover over the bell. Wait for the drop down. Click the choice that says send me all notifications. Now you're properly notified. See you on the next video. Peace.